Welcome back to Brick by Brick, the best real estate podcast ever, according to Sean's lovely wife, affectionately known as Mrs. CEO, aka my Chinese mom. And I'm Noah Laker.
I'm Sean Go.
And together we are Hardin Realty and Property Management, and we host this podcast. And thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. And we're going to talk about a lot of real estate topics today. We're going to answer questions. We're going to talk about us. But something odd just happened this morning. I went to Starbucks and I was trying to get, this just struck me as weird. And I wanted to share it on the podcast because I asked for a tall water at the Starbucks drive-thru, and they gave me a little tiny water. And so obviously I talked to the person that made my water and I said, I asked for a tall water. And they said, that is a tall water, but it was very small. And they said, oh, you mean a grande water? And they're looking at me like I'm the asshole for expecting a tall water when I ask for a tall water. So they fancy themselves some kind of Italians or something. Although, as far as, and I'm no etymologist, but I don't think tall is an Italian word. So where do they get off?
That's how they categorize the size of the coffee, right? Tall and grande and venti or something.
I don't frequent Starbucks and I don't speak Italian. My French is rusty as well. So I don't know. But when I said a tall, I'm a very thirsty guy and I need to stay hydrated. So
yeah, he's like a camel.
Yeah, that's true. So now I have two waters. But anyway, that's not real estate related. So let's jump into the big news, which is bonus depreciation is back in play. Woohoo! Okay, the big, beautiful bill contains provisions to extend the 100% bonus depreciation. And we've been waiting for this for years. It's a big deal. So in 2017, during Trump's first term, they passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which introduced bonus depreciation. If you don't know what that means, it's basically, when you purchase a property, you can depreciate it. And standard straight line depreciation on a residential property, the life cycle in the eyes of the IRS is 27 and a half years. So if I buy a property and I do nothing, just by default, I can write off 1/27 and a half of the property's value
per
year on my tax. So a $275,000, structure value, not including land, I get $10,000 per year. That's for simple math. 1/27 and a half fraction of the property value, according to the assessor. But with bonus depreciation, what you can do is you can get a cost segregation study on the property, subject to certain IRS requirements, and then you can accelerate that depreciation. So when it was at 100%, you could accelerate 100% of the depreciation in year one, and basically you don't have to pay taxes anymore. If you employ, Sean and I employ this strategy, and we don't really pay a lot in taxes.
So you have a lot more left over to use as down payment for the next investment.
To keep it rolling. It's a really, really powerful tax real estate investment strategy. And probably, I'm a real estate broker. Half of my sales probably relate to this investment strategy where I have, we manage over 100 Airbnb properties and we're kind of like the Airbnb experts in town. So people will approach me and they want to buy an STR investment for the purpose of getting a cost segregation study and accelerating the depreciation. Here's the problem. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act had a sunset provision, so it started scaling down.
Like 20% per year?
20% per year starting in 23. Now, as of recording, it's 2025. So we're down to 40% in year one, and then your CPA can apply.
And next year, it was to be just left with 20%.
And then it's gone. And that's where we've been at. But I was hoping and praying and crossing my fingers that they would bring back 100%, and my prayers have now been answered. So this article from Aviation International describes the situation. The full bonus depreciation is slated to return under a provision in the U.S. House Ways and Means Committee's portion of the massive budget reconciliation package. The committee is set to consider the tax portion today. This, by the way, is a little bit outdated because since this article was written, the House of Representatives actually passed the so-called big, beautiful bill or whatever. And the Senate is now arguing about Medicare and stuff, so they're probably going to have to kick it back and revise it and stuff. But it looks like it's happening. Okay? It looks like it's happening. Democrats and Republicans, for all their faults, they seem to agree on this specific tax stipulation. So the article continues, this follows the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee approval of its part of the package, including an additional $12.5 billion for air traffic control and an elimination of green energy incentives on April 30th. Under the House Ways and Means package, taxpayers would be permitted to immediately expense 100% of qualified property, including business aircraft. There's good news for us and our PJ, that is acquired on and after January 20th, 25, and before January 1st, 2030. So you might have caught that. What they're trying to do is retroactively kick this into effect. So if you bought property in 2025 and it was placed in service in 2025, you can take advantage of this strategy. So current law has been phasing out bonus depreciation with a 40% reduction allowance for the property this year, going down to 20% next year. The measure is among several business incentives included in the package coming under consideration. Another provision would permit the immediate deduction of domestic research and experimental expenses incurred after December 1st, 2024. Currently, domestic research and experimental, blah, blah, blah. So look, it goes on about other business, other business implications here. But for real estate investors, this is a really big deal. It's a really powerful strategy. And maybe we should talk about it a little bit, because not just anybody can take advantage of cost segregation and bonus depreciation. So here's the key, because we've mentioned STRs. In order to qualify and take advantage of this strategy, you have to typically have rep status, real estate professional status. And in order to obtain real estate professional status, you need to spend a minimum of 750 hours per year actively participating in your property management. Ooh, yeah, that's a lot of hours. Now, the average client of ours is like a W-2 worker, a technology worker from Google or Meta or Splunk or whatever down in the Bay Area, and they make a lot of money, $200,000-300,000 a year, but they don't have time to be managing their properties so aggressively and so actively. They're going to hire a property manager, thus eliminating this potential. However, if you operate a short-term rental, the IRS views you more as a business owner. And so instead of having to obtain rep status, you spend 100 hours minimum per year and more than anybody else. So you have to be the primary manager of the business, the rental. But if you meet that requirement, then you don't need rep status, and still you can take advantage of this bonus depreciation.
That is 7 times less time spent to qualify.
Brilliant arithmetic, Sean. And so it's like they call this the STR loophole, is the colloquial term for this in the streets. And it's just a lot less cumbersome, obviously, than spending 750 hours a year, managing an apartment building. What would you even? By the way, I've been a property manager for a long time. What the heck? What the heck would you do for 750 hours? Write up a few renewals, collect a few rent checks. You might turn an apartment. How are you going to spend 750 hours?
Still doesn't add up. Doing all this still doesn't add up to 700 hours.
It doesn't make sense. Maybe we're too tech forward. Maybe we're just too automated. But I don't spend a lot of time on long term. It's one of those, it's like you don't pay the plumber to bang on the pipes. You pay him to know where to bang. So it's like long-term rentals require a lot of specialized knowledge, legal expertise, understanding lease agreements and tenancy law, especially in a place like California. But it doesn't require a lot of my time. It's just being available when something goes sideways, which it inevitably will.
Even if the property owner does spend 750 hours I'm not sure whether he is able to document it to prove that he met those hours.
Well, that's another thing. In the event of an audit, you need to keep records. So what we do, back to the point here, is we help investors get into short-term rentals, and we can sort of plug them into our system where we create that documented, not like fabricate, but we help them actively participate. We show them the system. We train them to actively manage their properties in accordance with IRS guidelines, thus obtaining the necessary designation under the IRS codes to take advantage of cost segregation and bonus depreciation. And then you might be a W-2 worker making $300K a year, and last year you gave half of it to Uncle Sam, and now you give nothing to Uncle Sam. And he cries and wets the bed because he doesn't get his clutches on your money.
The idea of a serious investor is pay less tax, have leftover to more quickly gather enough for the next down payment, rinse and repeat, and see yourself having multiple properties in a matter of years.
That's right. That's right. So obviously you're not writing off, like you buy a $500,000 duplex and you're running it on Airbnb or whatever. You're not going to write off $500,000. But with the cost segregation study, it's like a PDF document, and what they do is they break your property down into its individual components, like down to the screws and the cabinet handles and hardware and the fan blades and like windows and doors and whatever. They break the property down and give you a report where, in the event of an audit, the IRS is going to say, well, how do you know that you could write off this $80,000. I should probably disclose, by the way, we are not accountants, we're not CPAs, and I'm stupid. So don't take my word for it. You should talk probably to a CPA before you just go.
But it's a very scientific engineering approach. So it can be justified, every single piece. So it's not guesswork.
That's right. And be careful with, like, you go to get your cost segregation study, be careful with the online cheap solutions like KPKG, which are fine if you have a $200,000 property and not much to lose. But I would recommend talking to my friend David Weiner over at Cost Segregation Services, LLC. He's a good friend of ours. And he flew out to Atlanta recently to speak at our event, which was like really cool of him.
Right.
It was very cool. Had a little too much to drink. Take it easy, David. Crazy guy. But no, so Airbnb is just, it opens up, not just Airbnb, but short-term rentals. It gives you sort of a fast track. That's why they call it the STR loophole, because it gives you a fast track to take advantage of this really powerful tax strategy. And you're writing off $80,000 on this year's taxes, which is probably, unless you're in the top 1%, it's probably exceeds your tax liability for the year. So you're not paying federal taxes. It's like, that's how that works. Sean and I do pretty well, and we don't pay a lot in taxes because we do this. We have rep status, real estate professional status. But anyway, that's how we help the average person. That's how we help most of our clients not only invest in real estate for the cash flow, for the appreciation, and all the benefits that come with being a real estate investor, but the tax savings are actually far more valuable in the first decade of ownership than the cash flow could ever be.
Right. And if you focus on multifamily, which is what we specialize in a matter of, say, 3 years, we have had clients who reached like 10 doors, 14 doors. If you don't buy a single family at a time, you buy duplex, triplex, that kind of thing. Suddenly you see yourself having a double-digit number of units, which is very impressive.
Yeah, triple, quadruple, septuple. There's no limit. I mean, you can do whatever you want. And actually, you bring up, one of our clients is the owner of a janitorial company. It was the first company that we hired when we started our Airbnb business. It was like such a luxury for us. We didn't have to scrub the toilets ourselves anymore.
Well, we started doing everything ourselves. So we outsourced to this cleaning company, and the owner saw how good Airbnb business was and jumped into it, and we showed him, what to buy, how to furnish, and then we run the Airbnbs for him, and now he has 10 doors.
It was really good. He's crushing it, but he saw us when we were at the very beginning bootstrapping it with 2 little rental arbitrage apartments in downtown Sacramento, just like figuring this stuff out. And we were very scrappy. I mean, we were cleaning our own units and installing smart locks and designing the furniture and the space. And then, and COVID hit, right? And we faced immense challenges. Just like if you've ever started your own thing, watching this, whoever you are, you know what it's like when you have to make all these little moves and arrangements and just figure out a new industry and nobody's there to help you. And it's like, like Elon Musk talks about, like chewing broken glass and staring into the abyss. It just sucks. It's really hard. And there were times when we're like just working relentlessly 16 hours a day, not sleeping, not eating. I'm like sleeping on the floor in the office, curled up on my little prayer mat, because there's no time, you're just constantly aggressively trying to grow this thing before you figure out how to like delegate, and that's what it takes. That's what it takes to do something consequential.
And we figured out every problem.
Yeah.
And then we learned to automate, then eventually delegate and build a name for ourselves. And we ended up co-hosting for many clients, especially from the Bay Area. So here we are.
Here we are. And Sean and I are best friends. Sean's my best friend. I'm not going to speak for you. You're my best friend. I really appreciate you.
You are, too.
And maybe we should talk about how we met, because that's the number one question that we're always asked is, how did you guys meet?
Yeah, we are so different.
I think we're like, you could confuse us for brothers, but apparently people think that we're like an unusual duo.
Just 30 years apart.
And, we joke that Sean's a banana and I'm an egg, because he's yellow on the outside and white on the inside, and I'm the opposite. Which is, save for the mild racism, a very funny bit, I think. But how did we meet, Sean? How did we meet, Sean?
Well, I started WISH, the Airbnb, the company doing Airbnb.
WISH STR, WISH short-term rental.
So then I'm an introvert. I don't like talking to people, especially strangers, and sales is not my forte. And I forced myself to keep looking for places that I can arbitrage, I can rent out. I can rent first and then put on Airbnb. And I tried 14 places. I only managed to get one, the very first one. Then I tried a few more, and along the way, I went to the big apartment complex that Noah was working at as a property manager. And I didn't know then that all apartments in Sacramento are anti-Airbnb.
Yeah, we don't let you sublet.
Yeah,
and this guy walks in my office trying to fool me, asking all these sneaky questions like, you want to rent? No, you didn't want to rent an apartment at all. And he was trying to convince me that he wanted to rent an apartment. So I leaned in. I was like, cut the crap, pal. What are you really doing? Because that's not the first time I had seen that, by the way, where investors are visiting my leasing. Because I worked at a lot of different leasing offices over the years. And like 3 years. And sometimes investors will shop around and do market research, and they kind of just waste your time and get data out of you, which is fine, but at least be transparent about it, So anyway, this guy comes in trying to sell me snake oil, and I was like, what are you really up to?
Snake oil is good for you.
That's right. And so he starts talking about Airbnb, and it was at a funny time when I was also thinking about the rental arbitrage strategy for
student housing.
Right. I had somehow got that idea in my head like 2 weeks prior. So when you come in talking about rental arbitrage, Airbnb, I was like, whoa. And he had this insane twinkle in his eye. I was like, this guy's got something special going on. I want a piece of that.
And your gut told you, like, don't let this guy go.
That's right. So I basically just bothered you relentlessly.
He begged me for it.
I didn't beg. Exactly. And he was pretty eager too. I was uncertain. I had to think about it. But no, I bothered him a lot.
We figure out a good partnership. I didn't like sales. He's good at it. He doesn't like tech. I'm good at it. So we were like, okay, I do the tech, you do the sales. Boom. The rest is history.
Bada bing, bada boom. And you might not know it because today Sean is actually very charming. But at the time, yeah, you were very like kind of closed off and just didn't want to deal with people. And I didn't want to deal with the computers. And it was like a perfect marriage, right? Like two opposite but equal puzzle pieces.
Right.
So, and there's probably a lesson in there somewhere for those with the eyes to see. So yeah, we busted our asses to make something happen. And then COVID almost bankrupted us, which sucked. But
we survived.
We thrived. And today we have our little, like the king of our little hill here. Doing pretty well. So, in case you were ever wondering how Sean and I are so chummy, that's how we met. In other news, MoneyWise reports California homeowners accuse insurers of nefarious conspiracy to deny them coverage. That's like accusing a snake of trying to bite your ankle, because that is exactly what they're designed to do. The house always wins, right? So it's like people are shocked that these insurance companies tried to weasel out of paying those fire disbursements. But anyway, more than 573,000 California homes are now covered under the state's FAIR plan, a last resort insurance program that's become anything but optional. After January's wildfires caused an estimated $131 billion in damages, of which only $45 billion was insured, frustrated homeowners are demanding answers. And I heard that the secondary insurance out of Germany that was insuring the insurers just posted like hundreds of billions of dollars in losses after everything that transpired in California. So it's been a little rough.
We saw that apartment building in LA.
Yeah.
Still having the scaffolding, and they were doing repairs.
That's right. Yeah, we were on our way. We were in Arizona for a week onboarding a new apartment building, and then a bunch of new Airbnbs. And then on our way back, we drove through the Palisades, which was just devastated. They're moving pretty quickly to rebuild it because every unit there is worth $1 million, and it's not. You can't really slack on that. There's too much money involved. So they're doing a good job putting it back together. But it was really, really, really devastating. Dozens of homeowners have filed a lawsuit in Los Angeles County accusing major insurers of a nefarious conspiracy to drop coverage in fire-prone areas and push people into the FAIR plan, which has high premiums and limited protections. The plaintiffs are seeking a jury trial and triple damages, and their claims could reshape the already fragile insurance market in California, which sucks for me as a real estate broker because I only have like 2 options left. These insurers are, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but these insurers are seriously fleeing California. They just shut down their California divisions. We don't want to deal with it. Go get your insurance somewhere else. And sometimes there is nowhere else. So like I've got Goosehead, and I don't know, I think Farmers just left. I was using Farmers Safe Show, Safeguard, whatever it's called. There's like a handful of options left. So getting insurance quotations for my clients has become quite cumbersome.
By the way, besides the normal insurance, if you are running your property as an Airbnb business, you still need a different kind of coverage, which is usually the company called Proper. That is the only one that will cover your property as a business, as an STR business, all your usual home insurance doesn't cover anything.
Yeah, you need a specialized insurance. And Proper is not the only one, but Proper is the one that we used at the time because they're the only one that I'm aware of that covers rental arbitrage.
Right.
Which is interesting, but they have really strong, they can replace your homeowner's policy entirely or supplement it as you see fit. So yeah, Proper has, and they've taken really good care of us. You know, we've had 1 or 2 claims through them. They've
loss of income.
Yeah.
From a flood, a fire, or whatever. If something happens to your property and during that time, you cannot run your Airbnb, you can claim loss of income.
That's true. Yeah, you want to make sure you have that rider on there because a lot of insurance policies, they might, like we had a typhoon in Scottsdale that knocked out a couple of our units and destroyed the roofs. And not only will they cover the damage, and a lot of insurance companies will only cover the damage, but because we had that rider on our insurance policy, they also cover the 2 months of lost income, which during the season, that could be, $10,000 a month. So really powerful. You want to make sure that you're insured like redundantly, too much insurance, as opposed to a home warranty, which will just screw you. They will not help you.
Right.
Has been my experience. So that's what's up. Yeah. We talked about bonus depreciation. We talked about how we met. We talked about my water debacle. We talked about insurance. And so now we're going to answer some questions that were submitted. And by the way, if you ever want to submit a question to us that we can read and try to answer on the show for whatever our opinion is worth, you can go ahead and email brickbybrickquestions@gmail.com. I would have made that a company email, but they charge us I think Google charges us like $12 per email that we create. And I just couldn't, I'm the CFO, I couldn't stomach that. We don't have that kind of scratch. So it's a Gmail address. But brickbybrickquestions@gmail.com, send us a question. And Sean and I will do our best to get to it. So Rachel from Nevada said, how do you guys decide whether to Airbnb a property or just rent it out long term? Is it purely about numbers or are there other factors that you look at? Sean?
Well, it also depends on the property owner. Some of them have preferences.
Yeah.
Some of them feel like STR has too many moving parts, even though we are co-hosting.
Could we reduce some of those moving parts? I too feel like there are too many moving parts, and I'm sick of it. Yeah.
So there are people for Airbnb STR. There are people for LTR. There isn't, like a best answer. It all depends on what you like, and also depends on your location.
Also quality of the property. Like if you still have white appliances and Formica countertops and stuff, and we're not going to Airbnb your property. We offer through Hardin Realty and Property Management, we offer long-term rental management, usually for apartment buildings. And through our sister company, WISH STR, we offer Airbnb management. But we'll have these slumlords approach us and ask us to manage their crappy little properties. And no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to subject our guests and customers to that low standard of quality, where I know if something breaks, you're not going to want to fix it. You're going to nickel and dime us on repairs and renovations. So I would say property quality and location are probably the biggest factors. The owner's preference is whatever is going to make them the most money.
And the quality of the furnishing. So guests have high expectations of Airbnbs, so they expect it to look really nice, be comfortable, be safe, whatever. If you have a bad location, the condition of the property is bad, your furnishing is really like cheap, Dollar Tree quality, then it's going to be a bad experience. You're going to have bad reviews and it's just not going to perform.
You can't have that. There are costs to doing business. And ultimately, if you're saving $80,000 on your tax bill through cost seg, tax depreciation, STR loophole strategy, it shouldn't matter that much if you have to spend $8,000 on some furniture. So why are people so cheap? Just breaks my heart. So yeah, owner preference, location. Thank you for the question, Rachel. Kevin in San Jose, California said, you've mentioned investing in both single family and multifamily properties. What's the tipping point where multifamily starts to make more sense? Dude, the tipping point is right here, right now. The tipping point is always. I'm a huge advocate for multifamily investment. I don't think almost ever you should invest in a single family home. If you're like me and you're a sucker and you just fall in love with the cutest home on the block in Natomas and you go and buy a property, you're going to end up spending $6,000 on the sewer lateral when the tree root grows into it and the dish, and the garbage disposal goes bad and all sorts of horrible things. And your property taxes are ridiculous. With multifamily, you're just getting more bang for your buck. So if you see yourself living in a property at some point, you just want to like buy it now and rent it out for a while and then move your family in when it's time to upgrade, then yeah, like if it's a lifestyle decision, go ahead and buy yourself a nice single family home. But how many times have we seen like brand new investors, high income W-2 workers with too much cash and not enough time? They go and they buy some fancy single family home. Their monthly payment is $5,000 and the rent is $26,000. Why would you do that? Why on earth? At least try to break even, At least. There's just no sense to it. So, single family homes sometimes can appreciate more. Sometimes. Not really.
Depending on location.
Yeah, there's very few benefits to investing in single family versus multifamily, where, your land value might be similar and your property taxes are similar and your maintenance expenses are similar, but you're getting 2 doors or 3 or 4 doors or 6 or 10 or 20 or whatever. Like the higher you're buying in bulk as opposed to retail.
Right. Yeah. So marginally it costs a little bit more per unit, but not double like 2 single families. So, and it's also easier to manage having them, side by side. So we are for multifamily.
I'm for multifamily all day long. If you're a serious investor, you shouldn't be buying. Now, another exception is like if you're in a Midwestern market and you're buying these crappy little single family homes and you're running them as slums and renting them out. Often I'll see people doing that with Section 8, which is going to get you in trouble, by the way, because the inspector is going to come and check your place out and they're probably not going to be happy with what they find. And if you're buying these single family homes for $60,000 out in Pennsylvania, yeah, you can make some cash flow, but those are they don't appreciate. They've been 60,000, they will continue to be 60,000. Whereas property values in a place like Northern California have gone up and up and up and up to a degree that's just ridiculous. But the people who have invested here, works to their great benefit. Whereas somebody who invests in Pennsylvania, there's no growth.
Sacramento is very fast growing. It has been for the last few years.
Decade.
And there are many, many constructions going on.
Okay, moving on. Tanya, also in California, said, my partner and I are thinking of buying a duplex and living in one unit. Is it better to house hack your first deal or save that strategy for later? House hacking is awesome. Good on you.
Not just for a duplex. You can house hack on a triplex or even a fourplex.
That's right. You can, first of all, the reason a lot of people will house hack is because they think they're going to get an FHA loan at 3.5% down. But as we know, your PMI never goes away on an FHA loan. You're going to have to refinance that down the line, which is expensive. So what you'd be better doing is doing 5% down conventional.
That's the lowest possible for conventional?
Yeah. You can do, if you're going to occupy the property, if it's your primary residence, then you can do as little as 5% down on a conventional. And then once you reach that threshold of 20% equity, the PMI automatically goes away. And that doesn't happen for FHA, so don't use FHA. And by the way, it's a total misconception that you can only use FHA. They call it a first-time home buyer's loan. That's like slang. It's not literal. you can use an FHA loan more than once, based on certain requirements. But you shouldn't use it at all. But anyway, just to address your question, Tanya, house hacking is awesome. It's a fantastic way to get into real estate investment. Fantastic. It's like the easiest, tried and true method where you're hands-on, and not only are you hopefully like paying your loan, and your tenants are paying for a significant portion or maybe all of your living expenses, but also and the tax benefits and all the benefits that go along with getting into the real estate game. And you're getting in cheap because you're doing a low down payment loan because it's your primary, and you can rinse and repeat after the first year of ownership and whatever. All of that is great, but I would argue that the greatest benefit is the education. That's incalculable. It's way more than whatever little cash flow you're making.
Plus, you're just living next door. So you witness the guests coming in, you see firsthand for yourself all the problems, and you can also be the one, if you choose, to go address the problems. So you are in the thick and thin of the problem, the situation.
Right in the thick of it. And you're learning a lot, and you can manage the tenants yourself and just learn how the forms work and all the different paperwork and legal implications of being a property owner and a property manager. And if the tenants know that you're the owner and that you're living next door, of course, they're probably going to be more respectful. You can be a little bit more selective about the kind of tenant that you want as your neighbor. And it's I shouldn't say that, actually. Fair housing still applies, so you always want to respect fair housing law. But yeah, just being hands-on, being directly involved, and having that complete control over your asset because you're actually there on site at all times is really, really valuable. I can't recommend it enough. I think everybody should be house hacking. If you live in an apartment right now, I don't know, you and maybe your partner or whatever, you guys need to collaborate, scrimp, save, put together $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and do your first house hack. It's so worth it. It's so great.
Right.
And then after a few years of amortization, you start seeing more of that monthly payment go back into your pocket as equity. And you can go and just rinse and repeat, do the same thing again. I've had so many success stories with my clients.
Refinance, pull out something, buy the next one.
Limitless options. It's so powerful. So, anything else, Sean?
Nope. That's about it.
Oh no, you usually have like a wise mantra to finish the show.
So yeah, usually I try to leave some words of wisdom, thought for the day. So here is one for you. Do what others won't, and then you will get what others don't.
Brick by brick. Bye.
See ya.